My daughter threw my things out on the street. Get out, old woman, I sold your house. Live wherever you want. I quietly packed up and left. She celebrated her victory all week, but she forgot that. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I spent 32 years in that house on Maple Street. 32 years of memories soaked into every floorboard, every crack in the ceiling, every rose bush I'd planted with my own hands. My husband, Robert, and I had bought it when Sarah was just a baby. He'd passed 5 years ago, leaving me the house, a modest pension, and our daughter. The girl we'd raised to be kind, to be honest, to be strong. But somewhere along the way, Sarah had changed. It started small. She'd always call asking about my plans for the house. "Mom, this place is too big for you," she'd say, her voice dripping with false concern. "What if you fall? What if something happens?" I'd brush it off. I was 73, not dead. I gardened, I volunteered at the library, I had my book club every Thursday. I was fine. Then came the visits with her husband, Derek. They'd walk through my home like vultures circling prey, commenting on the outdated kitchen and the wasted space. Derek worked in real estate, or so he claimed. I never trusted him. He had those cold eyes, the kind that calculated profit while pretending to smile. "You know, Margaret," he'd said one evening, "houses in this neighborhood are selling for $500,000 now. You're sitting on a gold mine." I'd told him I wasn't interested in selling. This was my home. The first real warning came 3 months ago. I'd found paperwork in my mail, documents I hadn't ordered, forms I hadn't requested, property assessments, market analyses. When I confronted Sarah, she'd laughed it off. "Oh, Mom, I was just curious about the value. For your estate planning, you know?" Estate planning. As if I were already in my grave. Then the pressure intensified. Sarah started bringing up nursing homes. "Assisted living facilities," she'd correct herself, as if the sugarcoating made it better. She'd leave brochures on my kitchen table, highlighting amenities I never asked for. Swimming pools, group activities, 24-hour medical care. "I don't need medical care," I'd snap. "I need my own home." But Sarah had always been persistent, stubborn, like her father. Except Robert's stubbornness came from love. Hers. I wasn't so sure anymore. Last Tuesday, everything shattered. I'd been at my book club discussing The Great Gatsby with Linda and Patricia when I came home to find my front door wide open. My heart hammered as I stepped inside. Had I been robbed? But nothing seemed missing. Instead, something felt wrong. Different. Sarah was in my living room, surrounded by boxes. My boxes, my photo albums, my clothes, my mother's china. Everything packed up like I was already gone. "Sarah?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "What's going on?" She didn't even look up. "Oh, good, you're back. Derek's bringing the truck around." "Truck? What truck? What are you doing with my things?" That's when she finally met my eyes. And what I saw there chilled me to the bone. Not my daughter. Not the little girl who'd cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who'd asked me to help her pick her wedding dress. This was someone else. Someone cold. Someone cruel. "I'm cleaning out the house, Mom, because it's not your house anymore." The words didn't make sense. "What are you talking about?" She smiled. Actually smiled. "I sold it. The closing was yesterday. The new owners take possession next week and you need to be out by Friday." My legs went weak. You can't sell my house. It's mine. Your father left it to me." "Actually," Derek's voice came from behind me, making me jump. "Legally speaking, Sarah's been your power of attorney for 6 months. Remember those papers you signed at her birthday dinner? The ones I witnessed? I remembered. She'd told me they were healthcare directives, just in case something happened. I'd signed them because I trusted her, because she was my daughter. Those gave me full legal authority over your assets, Mom, Sarah said, her voice flat, businesslike. And I decided it was time to liquidate. The house sold for $485,000. Very good price. That's my house! You can't— Get out, old woman! Sarah's scream cut through my protest. I sold your house. Go live wherever you want. There's a motel on Highway 9. Maybe they'll take you. Derek started carrying my boxes outside. My entire life reduced to cardboard containers, thrown onto my own front lawn like garbage. I stood there, frozen, watching my daughter, my own flesh and blood, dispose of me like I was nothing. What else could I do? I gathered what I could carry and walked away from the only home I'd known for 3 decades. Behind me, I heard Sarah laughing, celebrating her victory. But she'd forgotten something important. She'd forgotten who taught her to be strong in the first place. I spent that first night in my car, parked behind the public library where I'd volunteered for 15 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent countless hours helping others find resources, find hope, find answers. Now I was homeless, sitting in my 15-year-old Honda Civic, surrounded by trash bags filled with whatever I'd managed to grab from my lawn before the sprinklers came on. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Everything I'd worked for, everything Robert and I had built together, gone. Stolen by the very person we'd sacrificed everything to raise. I kept replaying the moment in my mind. Sarah's cold eyes, Derek's smug smile, that laugh, that horrible, triumphant laugh. How long had they been planning this? As dawn broke through my windshield, I took inventory. 3 changes of clothes, all damp from the sprinklers. My purse with my wallet. Thank God I'd had it at book club. My phone, nearly dead. Some photo albums Sarah hadn't gotten to yet. My mother's jewelry box. And in the glove compartment, something I'd forgotten about. The original deed to the house. The one Robert and I had signed in 1992. I'd kept it there after our bank's safety deposit box flooded years ago, meaning to put it somewhere safer. I never had. The deed was in my name. Only my name. Robert had insisted on it. If anything happens to me, Maggie, I want you protected, he'd said. No one can ever take this from you. But someone had. My own daughter. I pulled out my phone and searched for the county property records. My heart sank as I found it. The house on Maple Street, now listed under new ownership. Some LLC I'd never heard of. Closing date, 5 days ago. The sale had already gone through. But how? Even with power of attorney, Sarah couldn't just sell my house without my signature on the deed transfer, could she? That's when it hit me. Those papers at her birthday party. Derek had been so insistent I signed them right there in front of everyone. He'd even joked about the pen running out of ink, making me sign multiple pages. Had I signed more than healthcare directives? Had I unknowingly signed away my own home? Rage bubbled up inside me, hot and pure. Not the helpless anger of last night, but something sharper. Something focused. I wasn't done yet. At 8 a.m., I was waiting outside Feldman and Associates, the law firm that had handled Robert's estate. Margaret Feldman herself had been Robert's college friend. She'd been at our wedding. She'd held Sarah as a baby. When she arrived and saw me sitting on the bench outside her office, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her face went white. Margaret? My God, what happened? I told her everything. The words tumbled out. The pressure, the paperwork, the betrayal. By the time I finished, Margaret was pacing her office, her jaw tight with fury. This is elder abuse, she said flatly. Financial exploitation. Possibly fraud. Margaret, do you have any documentation? Anything showing the house was yours? I pulled out the deed with trembling hands. Margaret studied it carefully, then made 3 phone calls. I couldn't follow all the legal jargon, but I caught enough. Words like improper transfer, lack of mental capacity findings, fiduciary duty violation. Finally, she hung up and looked at me directly. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing an emergency motion to freeze the sale. The new buyers might be innocent parties, but if we can prove fraud, we can void the transaction. Second, we're revoking that power of attorney immediately. And third, she paused, her expression hardening. We're going to make Sarah wish she'd never tried this. For the first time in 18 hours, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. But Margaret, I said quietly, this will get ugly. She's my daughter. She stopped being your daughter when she threw your belongings on the lawn and called you an old woman, Margaret replied. Now she's just a criminal who happens to share your DNA. Are you ready to fight her? I thought about Robert, about the life we'd built, about the principle of the thing, not just for me, but for every elderly person whose children saw them as obstacles instead of human beings. I'm ready, I said. Margaret nodded. Good, because we're going to need evidence, documentation, witnesses. Everything you can remember about how this happened, I need you to write it down. Dates, times, conversations. Can you do that? I could. I would. There's something else, Margaret said, pulling out a legal pad. Where are you staying? I hesitated. My car. Last night, Absolutely not. You're staying at my guest house until this is resolved. No arguments. As we drove to Margaret's property in the suburbs, I formulated my plan. Document everything, gather evidence, find out exactly what Sarah and Derek had done. And then I'd take back everything they'd stolen. Sarah thought she'd won. She thought the old woman would just disappear, defeated and broken. She'd forgotten that I'd survived the death of my husband, raised a child alone, and built a life from nothing once before. I could do it again, but this time I wouldn't be building. I'd be reclaiming. Margaret's guest house was small but comfortable. A converted garage with a kitchenette, bathroom, and a fold-out couch that was infinitely better than my car seat. I spent that first morning doing exactly what Margaret had instructed, writing everything down. Every conversation, every suspicious moment, every document Sarah had asked me to sign. The pattern emerged clearly on paper. It had started 18 months ago, right after Sarah's promotion at the marketing firm. Suddenly, she had money, expensive clothes, a new car for Derek. They'd started talking about investments and opportunities. And they'd started looking at me differently, not as a mother, as an asset. By noon, I had 12 pages of detailed notes, times, dates, witnesses who'd been present during key conversations. Linda from book club had been there when Sarah first brought up estate planning. Patricia had heard Derek making comments about the house's value. Even my neighbor, old Mr. Chen, had mentioned seeing Derek photographing my property from different angles, claiming it was for insurance purposes. Margaret reviewed my notes that evening, making occasional marks with her red pen. This is good, Margaret, very good. The pattern of financial manipulation is clear. She looked up at me. Tomorrow, we file the motion, but I need you to be prepared. Sarah will find out immediately. The court will serve her with papers. She's going to be angry. Let her be angry, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. The next morning, Margaret filed the emergency motion to freeze the property sale and revoke the power of attorney. By 3 p.m., it was done. The legal wheels were turning. By 4 p.m., my phone started ringing. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. 12 calls in 20 minutes. I finally turned off my phone. The next morning, Margaret handed me her tablet. "You need to see this." It was Sarah's Facebook page, public for all to see. Posted 2 hours ago. "Heartbroken today. My elderly mother has been manipulated by predatory lawyers into filing false claims against me. I've spent years trying to help her, trying to get her into safe housing, and this is how she repays me. Dementia is such a cruel disease. Please keep our family in your prayers." Dementia? She'd actually written that I had dementia. The post had 63 likes. Comments poured in from people who didn't know me, didn't know the truth. "So sorry, Sarah. You're such a devoted daughter. Stay strong." My hands clenched around the tablet. She's trying to discredit me. Make it look like I'm mentally incompetent, which is exactly what I expected, Margaret said calmly. "And exactly what we'll use against her. This post is evidence, Margaret. She's publicly claiming you have dementia, a medical condition. We'll subpoena her to provide medical records proving this claim. When she can't, it demonstrates malicious intent and defamation." She was right. Sarah was so confident in her victory that she was getting sloppy. That afternoon, we received an email from Derek. Not a call, an email, like I was a business transaction. "Margaret, we can resolve this without courts and lawyers. Clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Sarah only wants what's best for you. The house sale has already closed, but we're willing to offer you $30,000 from the proceeds to help you get settled somewhere nice. A senior community, perhaps. This is a generous offer. I suggest you take it before legal fees consume everything. $30,000 out of $485,000. Margaret's response was swift and surgical. "Mr. Harrison, any further communication regarding this matter should go through me as Mrs. Whitmore's legal counsel. Your offer is rejected. We'll see you in court." 2 days later, the first breakthrough came. Margaret had subpoenaed the closing documents from the title company. When they arrived, I watched her face change as she read through them. "Margaret, look at this." She spread the documents across her dining table. There it was, my signature on the deed transfer. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close, very close, but the M in Margaret was wrong. I always looped it twice. This had only one loop. "They forged it," I whispered. "They forged it," Margaret confirmed. "This is no longer just civil fraud, Margaret. This is criminal forgery. Felony territory." She immediately photographed the signature, then pulled out samples of my real signature from the original documents I'd provided. The difference was subtle, but definitive. "We need a handwriting expert," she said, already dialing. "And we need to inform the district attorney's office. This changes everything." That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mom, this is getting out of hand. You're embarrassing yourself and our family. Drop the lawsuit and we'll forget this happened. Otherwise, people will see what you really are. A bitter old woman who can't accept that she needs help. Don't make us prove you're incompetent." See, the threat was clear. Drop the case, or they'd pursue a competency hearing, try to have me declared mentally unfit. I screenshot the text and forwarded it to Margaret. Her response came immediately. "Perfect. Keep them coming. Every threat, every message, it's all evidence." Sarah and Derek were starting to realize I wasn't going away quietly. They were starting to understand that I was fighting back. But they still thought they could intimidate me into submission. They still thought I was just a helpless old woman. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The handwriting expert's report arrived 5 days later. Dr. Chen, no relation to my neighbor, was a forensic document examiner who'd testified in over 200 court cases. His findings were unambiguous. The signature on the deed transfer was not mine. The probability of forgery, 98.7%. Margaret immediately filed an amended motion, attaching the expert report and requesting a criminal investigation. She also filed for an emergency restraining order, citing Sarah's threatening texts and Derek's harassment. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. This was really happening. I was taking my own daughter to court. Part of me kept hoping she'd come to her senses, apologize, make this right somehow. That hope died on Sunday evening. I was at Margaret's house, reviewing my testimony for the hearing, when car doors slammed outside. Through the window, I saw them, Sarah and Derek, along with two other people I didn't recognize. A man in an expensive suit and a woman with a briefcase. They marched up to Margaret's front door. Margaret stepped out before they could knock, her face professionally neutral. "This is private property. You need to leave." "We need to speak to my mother," Sarah said, her voice saccharine sweet. "Surely you're not denying a daughter the right to see her own mother." "I'm denying you the right to harass my client. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Derek stepped forward, and I noticed he was recording on his phone. "This is what we're dealing with, folks. Margaret Whitmore's lawyer won't even let her talk to her own family. What are they hiding? What are they afraid of?" The woman with the briefcase spoke up. "I'm Dr. Vanessa Price, a geriatric psychiatrist. We have concerns about Mrs. Whitmore's mental state and her vulnerability to exploitation." "Stop right there," Margaret cut her off. "If you're here in a professional capacity, you know you cannot assess or comment on someone you haven't examined. If you persist, I'll be filing a complaint with the medical board." Dr. Price's face tightened, but she stepped back. The man in the suit handed Margaret a card. "James Keller, attorney representing Sarah and Derek Harrison. We're prepared to offer a settlement. Mrs. Whitmore received $75,000 and signed documentation from 3 medical professionals certifying her need for assisted living. In exchange, she drops all legal action and enters a care facility of our choosing. This offer expires in 24 hours. $75,000. They'd increased the offer, which meant they were getting worried. "Your offer is rejected," Margaret said coldly. "You have 10 seconds to leave this property." Sarah's mask finally cracked. "You're making a huge mistake, Mother. We have evidence, real evidence, that you're not mentally fit. Doctor's appointments you've missed, bills you've forgotten to pay, medication errors." "I've never missed a doctor's appointment in my life," I said, stepping into the doorway. My voice came out stronger than I felt. "And the only bills I forgot to pay were the ones you hid from me. I found them later, all marked, opened by Sarah Harrison. You were intercepting my mail, trying to create a paper trail of incompetence." Derek's face went red. "You can't prove that." "I can, actually. Mr. Chen next door has doorbell camera footage of you taking mail from my mailbox, repeatedly. That's a federal crime, Derek." I watched the color drain from his face. He hadn't known about the camera. "This is ridiculous," Sarah hissed. "You're going to regret this, Mother. When we're done, everyone will know exactly what you are. A confused, paranoid old woman who's being manipulated for her money by a lawyer who sees a payday." "Get off my property," Margaret said, her hand on her phone. "Now, or I press dial and you explain to the police why you're violating the restraining order that's being filed tomorrow morning." They left, but Derek turned back at the car, pointing his phone at me one last time. "We're not done," he called out. "Not even close." After they drove away, I collapsed onto Margaret's couch, my hands shaking. The confrontation had taken everything out of me. "That went exactly as I expected," Margaret said, sitting beside me. "And they gave us everything we needed. Derek's admission about the mail, Sarah's threats on camera, their lawyer's absurd settlement offer, which shows consciousness of guilt." "They're not going to stop," I whispered. "No," Margaret agreed. "But neither are we. The hearing is tomorrow, Margaret. After that, you take a few days to rest. You've earned it. Let the legal system work." The hearing was brutal. Sarah's lawyer painted me as a confused, elderly woman, easily manipulated. But Margaret presented Dr. Chen's handwriting analysis, the doorbell footage, Sarah's social media posts, the threatening texts, a mountain of evidence. The judge granted everything we asked for. The property sale was frozen. The power of attorney was revoked. And a criminal investigation into forgery and elder abuse was officially opened. Sarah and Derek left the courtroom in fury. But they had to leave. They'd lost this round. For 3 days, I slept. Really slept for the first time since this nightmare began. But I knew this wasn't over. They'd be back. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. I was in Margaret Feldman's kitchen, making tea and actually feeling something close to normal, when my phone buzzed. Not Sarah this time. Someone I hadn't heard from in nearly a year. My sister, Helen. Helen lived in Arizona with her third husband. We'd drifted apart after Robert died. She'd made some pointed comments about me wasting my life in that old house, instead of living a little. We'd had words. We hadn't spoken since. Now her name appeared on my screen. Cautiously, I answered. "Maggie." "Oh, thank God. I've been so worried about you." Helen's voice was warm, concerned. Everything it hadn't been during our last conversation. "Sarah called me. She's beside herself. She told me what happened." "Did she?" My voice was flat. "She said you've been having some confusion, that you accused her of terrible things. Maggie, honey, I know this must be so hard. Losing Robert, aging, feeling like you're losing control." "Helen, I'm going to stop you right there. What exactly did Sarah tell you?" "That you forgot signing papers giving her power of attorney. That you're accusing her of stealing your house when really she was just trying to help you transition into a safer living situation. She's heartbroken, Maggie. Absolutely heartbroken." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Sarah had gotten to my sister. Of course she had. "Helen, Sarah forged my signature and illegally sold my house. There's a criminal investigation. The forensic evidence—" "Oh, sweetheart, you know how these lawyers are. They convince you to see conspiracies everywhere because that's how they make money. Margaret Feldman is billing you by the hour, isn't she? How much have you already paid her?" So that was the angle. Discredit my lawyer, paint me as the victim of legal exploitation. Margaret is Robert's oldest friend. She's helping me because what Sarah did is criminal. "Listen to yourself," Helen said, her voice dropping to that patronizing tone I remembered from childhood. "Accusing your own daughter of crimes? Maggie, this isn't like you. This sounds like— well, Sarah mentioned that Mom had similar issues before she passed. The paranoia, the accusations against family members who were only trying to help. My grandmother had had dementia. They were actually using that against me. I'm hanging up now, Helen. Wait, Maggie, please. I'm flying out next week. Let me come see you, just the two of us. We'll have lunch, talk about everything. Sarah doesn't even have to be there. Just let me help you see things clearly." "Goodbye, Helen." I disconnected and immediately blocked her number. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. They were trying a new tactic, surrounding me with family members who'd reinforce their narrative of my incompetence. But I saw right through it. Margaret walked in, saw my expression. "What happened?" I told her. She nodded slowly. "Classic isolation tactic. They're trying to make you doubt yourself, doubt your support system. Who else might they contact? There's no one else. Helen's my only sibling. Robert was an only child. His parents are gone. My parents are gone." The words came out sadder than I intended. "I really am alone in this, aren't I?" "No," said a voice from the doorway. I turned to see Linda Chen, my book club friend, Mr. Chen's daughter-in-law, standing there with a casserole dish. Behind her were Patricia, Ruth, and Diane from the book club, and Mr. Chen himself, carrying what looked like files. "We heard what happened," Linda said firmly. "We wanted you to know you're not alone." They filed into Margaret's living room. Mr. Chen opened his folder. It was full of printed screenshots and USB drives. "I have 6 months of doorbell footage," he said in his precise English. "I save everything to cloud. I have Derek taking your mail 23 times, Sarah entering your house when you're not home 8 times. And this," he pulled out another document. "Photos of Derek measuring your windows, your yard, making real estate listing preparations. All dated before you agreed to sell." I felt tears threatening. "Mr. Chen, you saved all this?" "I suspected something wrong," he said simply. "Your husband, Robert. He helped my family when we first moved here, 30 years ago. You think I forget? I watch. I document. I wait." Patricia spoke up next. "I contacted the library board. They want to issue a formal statement supporting you. 20 years of volunteer service. They know you're sharp as a tack." "And I talked to your doctor," Ruth added. "Dr. Morrison. She's willing to testify that you've never shown any signs of cognitive decline. In fact, she said you corrected her Latin prescription abbreviations last month." I couldn't speak. These people, some of them I'd known for decades, some for just a few years, had mobilized to support me. Diane, the quietest member of our book club, pulled out her phone. "I'm a retired paralegal. I've been documenting Sarah's Facebook posts, her public statements, everything that could be used as evidence. And I found something interesting. She's been posting about inheritance planning and caring for aging parents for over a year. She was planning this long before she did it. Margaret was already taking notes, collecting the evidence my friends had gathered." "This is incredible," she said. "This completely undermines their narrative that Margaret is isolated and confused. She has a robust social support network, people who can testify to her mental acuity and character." That evening, over Linda's casserole and Mr. Chen's dumplings, we sat around Margaret Feldman's dining table. Not just a lawyer and client, but a community. People who knew me, believed me, supported me. Sarah and Derek had tried to isolate me, discredit me, break me down. Instead, they'd revealed exactly who stood with me and who stood against them. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone, and that made me more dangerous to them than they'd ever imagined. The reconciliation attempt came on a Wednesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the initial hearing. I was at Margaret Feldman's office, reviewing the criminal investigation updates. The district attorney had officially charged both Sarah and Derek with forgery, elder abuse, and mail fraud, when Margaret's receptionist buzzed in. "Margaret, there's a Sarah Harrison here. She says she needs to speak with her mother. She's crying." Margaret and I exchanged glances. "Is she alone?" "She says she is. She seems genuinely distraught. It's a performance," I said quietly. But part of me, the part that had rocked her to sleep as a baby, that had taught her to ride a bike, that had held her hand through her father's funeral, that part wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd come to her senses. "Do you want to see her?" Margaret asked. "You don't have to. We can have security escort her out." I thought about it. Then, "I'll see her, but you stay in the room, and we record everything." Margaret nodded, setting up her phone to record. "If at any point you want her to leave, just say the word." Sarah entered the office looking nothing like the cold woman who'd thrown my belongings onto the lawn. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was uncombed. She wore jeans and an old sweater, not the designer clothes she'd been flaunting. She looked broken. "Mom," she whispered, and the tears started flowing. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I said nothing, just watched. I don't know what happened to me, she continued, collapsing into the chair across from me. It was like I became someone else. The money, the pressure, Derek pushing and pushing. I lost sight of what mattered. I lost sight of you. Still, I remained silent. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Mom, you're my mother. You're all I have left of Dad. And I threw you away like you were nothing. Her voice broke. Please, please, can we just talk? Just the two of us, without lawyers, without all this legal mess? Margaret started to speak, but I held up a hand. Where's Derek? I asked. Sarah's tears slowed slightly. Home. He doesn't know I'm here. Mom, Derek. He's not who I thought he was. He pushed me into this. He said the house was wasted on you, that we deserved it more, that you'd be fine in a home. I was weak. I listened to him. But I'm done listening. So, you're blaming Derek. I'm blaming myself for listening to him. Her voice rose. Then she collected herself. I'm not trying to escape responsibility. I know I made these choices. But I'm here to make it right. I'll testify against Derek. I'll admit what we did. I'll help you get the house back. Just, please, please give me a chance to fix this. It was a good performance, almost convincing. The tears seemed real. The remorse seemed genuine. But I'd taught her to act in high school plays. I knew when she was performing. What do you want, Sarah? She blinked as if confused. I want to make things right. I want my mother back. What do you really want? Her expression flickered, just for a second. A flash of something cold behind the tears. The DA offered you a plea deal, didn't they? I continued. Testify against Derek. Claim he manipulated you, and you get a reduced sentence, maybe probation. Maybe no jail time at all. Is that why you're here? Sarah's face hardened. The tears stopped, just like that. Like turning off a faucet. Fine, she said, her voice dropping to its normal register. You want to skip the emotion and get to business? Let's get to business. Yes, they offered a deal. Derek's going down, and I'm not going down with him. But I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd actually care about having your daughter back in your life. I cared about having my daughter in my life, I said quietly. But you stopped being my daughter when you forged my signature and threw me into the street. Oh, please. Sarah rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. We were going to give you money. You would have been fine. You were going to give me $30,000 from the sale of my $485,000 house. That's not generosity, Sarah. That's theft with a tip. It's more than you would have had if you'd kept living in that money pit. Property taxes, maintenance, utilities. You think that pension of yours would have covered it forever? She leaned forward. And now I saw the real Sarah. The calculating one. Face it, Mom. You were never going to be able to afford that house long term. We actually did you a favor. We just accelerated the timeline. Margaret stood up. This meeting is over. Sarah, you need to leave. But Sarah wasn't done. She turned to me with venom in her eyes. You think you're going to win this? You think the court is going to give you that house back? Dream on, old woman. Even if they void the sale, you'll spend every penny you have on legal fees. You'll end up in a state-run facility either way. At least with our plan, you'd have had some dignity. Dignity, I repeated. You threw my clothes on my lawn and called me an old woman. You told me to go live in a motel. Where was the dignity in that, Sarah? She stood up, her mask completely gone now. You know what your problem is, Mother? You're stubborn. Dad was stubborn too, and look where it got him, dead at 68 from stress. You could have had an easy retirement. Instead, You're going to fight and fight until you have nothing left. I'd rather have nothing and my integrity than everything and be like you." Sarah's face twisted with rage. "Fine. Enjoy your integrity in whatever bargain basement nursing home Medicaid sticks you in, because that's where you're headed. Derek and I will walk away from this. We've got lawyers, we've got resources, we've got connections. What do you have? Some pro bono attorney and a bunch of old ladies from book club?" "I have the truth," I said simply, "and apparently that terrifies you." She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, but she paused, looking back one last time. "You're going to regret this," she said coldly. "Both of you." After she left, I sat there, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "That was incredibly brave." "That was my daughter," I whispered. "My baby girl. And she's gone, isn't she? The real Sarah. She's just gone." "I'm sorry, Margaret." I nodded, wiping away a tear. But it wasn't a tear of weakness. It was a tear of acceptance. Sarah had chosen her path. Now I would walk mine, and I would not look back. The trial came 6 weeks later. The courthouse in downtown was packed. Apparently, the case had attracted media attention. Daughter allegedly defrauds elderly mother in house scheme made for compelling headlines. I saw cameras outside, reporters with microphones, curious onlookers. Sarah and Derek sat at the defendant's table with their lawyer, James Keller. They looked polished, professional, confident. Sarah wore a modest blue dress and pearl earrings, the ones I'd given her for her college graduation. The optics were calculated. Devoted daughter, concerned husband, victims of a misunderstanding. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Margaret, wearing the simple gray suit I'd bought at a thrift store. No performance, no costume, just myself. The judge, Honorable Patricia Simmons, was a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She'd reviewed all pre-trial motions and made it clear this trial would be conducted efficiently. The prosecution went first. The assistant district attorney, Michael Torres, was methodical and precise. He presented the timeline. The sudden interest in my property, the suspicious paperwork, the forged signature, the illegal sale. Dr. Chen, the handwriting expert, testified. He displayed blown-up comparisons of my real signature versus the forgery. The differences were stark when magnified. Different pressure, different angle, different formation of key letters. "In my professional opinion," Dr. Chen stated, "these signatures were not made by the same person. The probability of the disputed signature being authentic is less than 1%. Keller cross-examined aggressively. "Isn't it true, Dr. Chen, that elderly individuals often experience changes in their handwriting? Arthritis, tremors, medication effects?" "Yes. However, these variations show systematic differences in letter formation, not physical impairment. This is deliberate mimicry, not natural variation." Next came my neighbor, Mr. Chen. He brought the doorbell footage. Clear, time-stamped videos of Derek repeatedly removing mail from my mailbox. Sarah entering my house when I wasn't home, carrying empty boxes in and full boxes out weeks before the surprise eviction. "Mr. Harrison took mail 23 times over 4 months, Mr. Chen testified. "I thought it was strange, so I saved everything." Keller tried to dismiss it. Perhaps Mrs. Whitmore had asked her son-in-law to collect her mail while she was away. "I was never away," I interjected, and the judge allowed it. Margaret called me to the stand. I told my story. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just the facts. The pressure to sell. The paperwork at Sarah's birthday party that I was told were healthcare directives. The sudden eviction. My belongings thrown on the lawn. "Mrs. Whitmore," Margaret asked, "did you ever give your daughter permission to sell your house?" "Never." "Did you ever discuss selling your house with her?" "She discussed it. I repeatedly told her I wasn't interested." Did you sign the deed transfer document that sold your property? No, that signature is not mine. Keller's cross-examination was brutal. He painted me as confused, forgetful, unable to manage my affairs. He brought up doctor's appointments from 2 years ago, suggesting a pattern of missed visits. Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it true that you missed 3 medical appointments in 2023? I missed 2 appointments because I had the flu. The third was canceled by the doctor's office due to an emergency. I rescheduled all of them. And you remember this with certainty? Yes, I keep a detailed calendar. Would you like to see it? He moved on quickly. Then came the defense's turn. Sarah took the stand, and I watched her transform into the grieving daughter again. Tears on cue, trembling voice. I was only trying to help my mother, she testified. She was becoming forgetful, having trouble with bills. I was scared she'd lose the house to foreclosure or tax liens. I thought I was doing the right thing. And the signature on the deed transfer? Keller asked. My mother signed it. I watched her sign it at my birthday party. She was lucid. She understood what she was doing. Maybe her handwriting has changed. She is 73 years old. It was a good performance. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination. Miss Harrison, you testified that your mother was becoming forgetful and having trouble with bills. When did this alleged cognitive decline begin? About 18 months ago? 18 months. So around the time you received your promotion at work? I suppose so, yes. And when did you first start suggesting your mother sell her house? Sarah hesitated. Around the same time, Margaret pulled out a document. This is your Facebook post from 14 months ago. You wrote, finally figured out the perfect retirement plan with an emoji of a house and money bags. What did you mean by that? Sarah's face paled. That was about my own retirement planning. Really? Because 2 weeks after that post, you obtained a property assessment of your mother's house. And 1 month after that, you established an LLC, Harrison Properties, with you and your husband as sole members. The same LLC that eventually purchased your mother's house. Quite a coincidence. The courtroom was silent. Margaret continued, pulling out more documents. You also posted in a Facebook group called Real Estate Investment Strategies, asking about creative ways to acquire property from elderly relatives who don't want to sell. Would you like me to read your post to the court? That was just theoretical discussion. Theoretical, I see. Mrs. Harrison, you testified your mother signed the deed at your birthday party. How many people were at this party? 12, maybe 15. And yet we've subpoenaed all 15 guests. Not one of them remembers your mother signing a property deed. Several remember you asking her to sign healthcare documents. But no one saw a deed transfer. Why is that? Sarah looked at Derek, panic flashing across her face. Because it never happened, Margaret stated. You forged your mother's signature. You exploited a power of attorney that you obtained through deception. And when she discovered what you'd done, you threw her belongings on the lawn and told her to go live in a motel. Those were your exact words, weren't they? She's twisting everything. Am I? We have a recording. The courtroom erupted. Sarah's head snapped toward me. I held up my phone calmly. I recorded our last conversation at Margaret's office, Sarah. All of it. Including the part where you admitted Derek pushed you into this. Where you called me an old woman and said I'd end up in a bargain basement nursing home. Should we play it for the court? Sarah's lawyer was objecting. The judge was calling for order. Derek was whispering furiously to Sarah. But I just sat there, calm and cold. I'd won, and from the look on Sarah's face, she knew it too. The judge's verdict came 3 days after the trial concluded. The courtroom was less packed this time, just the necessary parties, some local media, and my small circle of supporters. Linda, Patricia, Ruth, Mr. Chen, and Margaret Feldman sat behind me. Sarah and Derek sat across the aisle with James Keller, who looked significantly less confident than he had at trial. Judge Simmons entered, and we all stood. She didn't waste time. I've reviewed all evidence, all testimony, and all applicable law. This is one of the clearer cases of elder abuse and fraud I've encountered in my 20 years on the bench." She looked directly at Sarah and Derek. The defendants engaged in a calculated, prolonged scheme to defraud Margaret Whitmore of her primary residence and life savings. The forgery was proven beyond reasonable doubt. The manipulation was systematic and cruel. Sarah's hand gripped Derek's arm. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "The property transfer is hereby declared void and invalid. Full ownership of 247 Maple Street reverts immediately to Margaret Whitmore. The title company and all parties involved in the fraudulent sale are ordered to reverse the transaction within 30 days." I exhaled. My house. I was getting my house back. "Furthermore," Judge Simmons continued, "I am awarding Mrs. Whitmore compensatory damages in the amount of $150,000 for emotional distress, displacement costs, and legal fees not covered by the criminal prosecution. This amount will be paid jointly and severally by Sarah Harrison and Derek Harrison." Keller shot to his feet. "Your Honor, my clients don't have—" "Then they'll sell assets, liquidate accounts, or arrange payment plans. This is not negotiable. Additionally, I am issuing a permanent restraining order. Sarah Harrison and Derek Harrison are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Whitmore, approaching her property, or coming within 500 feet of her person. Violation will result in immediate arrest." Sarah made a small sound, almost a whimper. "On the criminal charges," Judge Simmons said, her voice hardening, "I am remanding both defendants to custody pending sentencing. Bail is revoked. The evidence of forgery, elder abuse, mail fraud, and conspiracy is overwhelming. The defendants pose both a flight risk and a continued danger to the victim." Derek stood up suddenly. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. We have jobs. You have criminal convictions, Mr. Harrison, and you'll have time to think about them in a cell." Bailiff. Two deputies approached. Derek's face went crimson with rage. Sarah was crying. Real tears this time, not performance tears. Tears of someone who'd finally realized the consequences of their actions. "Mom!" Sarah turned to me, desperate. "Mom, please! Tell them this is too much. I'm your daughter. You can't let them do this to me." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Searched for any trace of the little girl I'd raised. The teenager who'd brought me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day. The young woman who'd cried in my arms when her father died. She was gone. Maybe she'd been gone for years and I'd just been too blind to see it. "You stopped being my daughter when you called me an old woman and threw my life onto the lawn," I said quietly. "You made your choice, Sarah. Now you live with it." The bailiffs led her away. Derek went quietly, but Sarah fought, screaming, "This isn't fair! I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry!" But sorry wasn't enough. Not anymore. Not after everything. When they were gone, Judge Simmons addressed me directly. "Mrs. Whitmore, you showed remarkable courage in pursuing this case. I hope this outcome provides some measure of justice." "It does, Your Honor. Thank you." The sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. I didn't attend. Margaret represented my interests. Derek received 4 years in federal prison for mail fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Sarah received 3 years for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Both were ordered to pay restitution. Their appeals were denied. The house was returned to me exactly 30 days after the verdict. The new owners, who claimed they'd purchased in good faith, were compensated by the title insurance company. It wasn't my problem. The house was mine again. I stood on the front porch of 247 Maple Street on a warm May morning, holding the new keys Margaret had given me. The lawn needed mowing. The paint was peeling in places. But it was mine. Mr. Chen waved from next door. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for everything." That afternoon, Linda brought over a casserole. Patricia brought wine. Ruth brought flowers. We sat in my kitchen, and toasted to new beginnings. "You did it," Linda said. "You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone." The check for $150,000 arrived the following week. Sarah and Derek had liquidated their savings, sold Derek's car, and borrowed against their credit cards. The money felt heavy in my hands, not because of its amount, but because of what it represented. My daughter had tried to rob me of everything, and instead, she'd lost everything herself. Was there satisfaction in that? Some. But mostly, I felt exhausted, relieved, and strangely empty. That evening, I found a box in my basement. Photos of Sarah as a child. Birthday parties, school plays, family vacations. I looked through them, remembering who she used to be. Then I closed the box and put it away. That Sarah was gone, and I had to let her go. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding, healing, and rediscovering what life could be. I renovated the kitchen with part of the settlement money. New cabinets, modern appliances, a window overlooking my garden. My roses bloomed brighter than ever. The book club expanded. Word had spread about the grandmother who fought back. 23 members now. We'd become a support network for elderly people navigating difficult family situations. 3 women came to me after hearing my story. Each had children trying to pressure them out of their homes. I connected them with Margaret. We started building cases, fighting back. Margaret and I co-founded a nonprofit, the Robert Whitmore Foundation for Elder Justice. We offered free legal consultations and education about financial exploitation. Within 6 months, we'd helped 42 elderly individuals protect their dignity. I wasn't just living, I was thriving. My 74th birthday arrived in October. The book club threw me a party in my backyard. Fairy lights strung between trees. Friends celebrating my victory, my renaissance. "A year ago," I said, "I lost everything. But I found something more valuable: community, purpose, and strength I never knew I had." The evening air smelled of roses and possibility. Meanwhile, Sarah's life had taken a very different trajectory. Minimum security facility. Derek in a harsher prison for mail fraud. I received a letter from her in December. Sarah apologized, admitted Derek had divorced her and blamed her for everything. She hoped I was happy. She didn't expect forgiveness. I read it 3 times, put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Maybe one day, but not today. Today, I had a foundation board meeting. Real people I could help. Sarah's fall wasn't my victory. My victory was standing back up. 3 years later, at 77, I testified before a state legislative committee in support of the Elder Financial Protection Act. The bill passed. It was named the Whitmore Act. My husband would have been proud. I learned that the hardest way possible. What would you do if your own family betrayed you? Would you fight, or would you surrender? Thank you for listening to my story. Now go live yours.